Hey guys, this is Peter. We're gonna start in a little bit. Let's give everyone about a few minutes and we'll see how it goes. All right. Uh, Looks like it's a good time to start, so let's get to it. Evening, everyone, and welcome to another Kentico Design Hour. My name is Petr Augustin. I'm a product designer at Kentico, and this talk is about improving user experience, not just on new features, but also across the whole product and how to be successful doing that. Uh, Thanks to Peter and Veronica for organizing Kentico Design Hours, actually, and for inviting me to speak a little bit about it. First things first, let's start with the schedule. The first part will be about my experiences optimizing UX in Kentico, and the second part will be kind of more practical. It will be like a set of general principles that you can use on similar projects if you ever do that. And the last part will be the sli.do Q&A after the talk. So if you have any questions, just go to sli.do and use the hashtag design hour, and we'll be sure to do that afterwards. We have a little bit of a delay because we are using YouTube to stream. So even if you can't see your question online, just hold on, we'll definitely get to it. All right, so let's start, shall we? First, maybe a little bit about me. I worked on content product for some time, actually the 4 past years. First, I started as a UX designer, and then I focused a lot on field research with our clients and partners. And now I'm working with 3 very excellent development teams to optimize user experience across the whole product on what we call kind of a UX architecture. And I'd like to share some insights into how we've been doing that for the past year, how you can do that to optimize, build, or prioritize experiences in your digital products if you want to make them better, basically. And we are trying to think about user experience kind of a different way as a whole customer experience, not just interaction design or UI in our app, as the most people think about user experience, I think, sadly. Customer experience for us is definitely not just about using the product or features. I think it's about a holistic experience that you have when you are a customer and you are paying us money for our service. We are using pretty standard design tools to do that, like customer journey mapping, personas, customer surveys, and others to design it. I'm going to go a little bit about these as well, but it's not the most interesting part of this kind of subject, I think. And nothing record-breaking there. You probably can find a lot of services already on how to do personas, how to do research, how to build customer journeys, right? So, okay, so why is it interesting then? Well, to think about the whole product experience, not just interaction design, I think that's like the ultimate UX design work. Actually, when people were coming up with this new field in the 90s and 2000s, and they were naming it user experience design, I think this is actually what they had in mind, to design the whole product experience or even service design for your users, not just how to change your UI design so that it's pleasing. I think it's the ultimate design work, really. And you have to combine a lot of expertise that you either have in your company, or you might even build new expertise if you don't. And it's basically a lot of systems design. It's really not about designing a feature or releasing one specific feature or doing a new feature well. It's more about what we should be building in the first place, or whether we should be building something, what outcome it can actually do for the user. Why are our users paying us? What's the business case around it? If the features that are already in the product are good enough for our users, or if they are hurting them, for example. And if you kind of change this mindset from design equals building things, right, into design is building the right things, I think very interesting stuff happens, not even just for designers, but also for teams, like cross-functional teams that you probably might be working in. And you really start asking these new questions, like what should we be building in the first place, not just how, and what's the best way to build it, like small increments, or maybe just do a testing without actually building anything, like prototyping the whole experience, for example. And how do you measure that? How do you know that you are actually meeting that outcome, or you are coming close to that? Should we really be doing it in the first place? I think now that's much more interesting, compared to just doing a usability test on the new feature that someone else tells you to design, and you don't really ask why. You just do it, right? And then you are happy and you release it, and you jump to some other feature, and you don't really know what your users are doing with it. Maybe no one uses it, but you don't care. You just build it. So rather than talk about building features with nice user experience, I'd rather our industry kind of shifts this whole conversation into talking about optimizing the product user experience. Now, optimizing user experience, what do I mean by that, right? It's kind of a foggy term. Well, let me list that for you a little bit. First of all, I think it needs to be holistic. You never just fix individual leaks in your product, like specific screens or specific experiences that maybe your biggest client tell you about, that this screen or this interaction sucks or this copy sucks. Or maybe your CEO had a demo of part of your product or noticed that something in the new feature doesn't add up. No, you always go over the whole product. In the ideal case, you would have personas and customer journeys, and you would have a pretty good overview of what people want to accomplish with your product, and that's a good way to start. Well, second, it has to be based on quality research and data and excellent access to users. This is the most important one, and I'm going to describe that in more detail later. And also, I think this is also very important. You need teams that can do their own prioritization. I don't just mean like expertise, like maybe they have some product management experience or they have design experience. Everyone can do their own prioritization, right? But they have to be allowed by the company to do that. So either PM that is owning that goal that they are working towards, or CEO if it's a smaller company, or leadership needs to basically okay this effort and let the team kind of come up with their own things to work on, and it can also be based on shared or agreed goals. That's the best way to do it, really. If you start this whole project by deciding what you want to accomplish, and then you kind of check if that key result is being accomplished or not. The last point which is absolutely necessary is that you need dedicated teams with time to do this. This absolutely cannot be a side project. That just doesn't work. And I'm also going to go into more detail, and experience into why that doesn't work out, like for poor Elon here on the screen, right? All right, so hopefully we have a sort of a shared understanding of what we want to talk about today. And I'm gonna kick this off by starting about telling you about our story, what was this like for Kentico. So basically, like I said, we worked on this for about a year now. I think we started sometime in May or June last year. And we had a very small team by then, it was a kind of a pilot project to see how it works out. And after just a few weeks working on this, we actually realized that a couple of things weren't that great. Like, after looking into our data and checking what we already know about our users, we realized that we have huge gaps, right? We had a lot of flawed data and like systems that manage this data, and we couldn't really do much decisions based on that data analysis. A lot of our data gathering and dashboards were just theater. Someone set them up at some point and they were showing something, but no one ever bothered to check if it's still valid, right? Or if they were buggy, or they showed something different, And a lot of our data just didn't make sense, Maybe we upgraded that feature, or we changed the system, and the old report or dashboard still showed it like a year ago. Basically, yeah, it was a mess. How it affected us, it didn't give us good answers. Well, if you ever run like a generative workshop, for example, a pretty common one is a design sprint. You know that there comes a time in design sprint when you hit a roadblock, right? And you're not sure how to continue, right? Maybe you are talking about, all right, so how many users are actually using this feature? Is it so important, or can we kind of stash it somewhere, or lower the priority? And you need answers really fast, right? Because the design sprint or any workshop really is usually time boxed. So it's not possible to just stop everything and do data research for another month or something like that. No, you really need systems that are already put in place, right? And we just didn't have that, right? It didn't give us good answers most of the time. We couldn't use it to diagnose problems in our product or make fast decisions, so it didn't work. And our solution to that was just to invest into quality data systems. I remember after that first design sprint that we had maybe 2 or 3 weeks in, I was just pretty angry, with our data systems. And I was like, that's it. One of my strategic goals for this year is just for everyone to have clean access to great data. And we had to throw away a lot of stuff. We had to redo a lot of existing reports that were shit. And we started to measure a lot of things that we didn't measure, or also that we thought that we couldn't possibly measure, right? And thing is that we didn't have any idea of what our infrastructure can and cannot do. Well, 6 months later, I'm pretty happy to say that we are able to produce results like this, in Amplitude. That's our kind of data analysis tool of choice at the point. And this is just an example of a very fast report. Of course, I'm not going to show you what it actually displays because this is our customers. But basically the result is that anyone from any team that is working on this initiative can just access the software and very quickly build ad hoc reports that still tells them, yep, this company is using this and have been using it for the past few months, or maybe they are not using it at all. It's okay to deprioritize it, and I'm very happy with it. I kind of found out that if you have good underlying systems in place that are usable, that are really accessible, and that are useful to teams, people will just naturally use them, like no agitation necessary. I never had to force anyone into using this. I just showed people that, hey, this source exists and it's pretty good and will show you real data and you can do whatever you want with it. And I guess it just snowballed from there, people started using it. So that's pretty cool. Okay, so speaking about teams, next pretty hard thing for us was to working with teams that previously just built feature race. And I'm not sure if this is a term that everyone is using, feature race, but it's something that we had a big experience with in Kentico. And just to give you some perspective on that, we were coming on the kind of establishing market with a new product. And we had a bunch of competitors that were better or on the same level and getting better as us with features. And they were doing much more for our customers. So our strategy of how to get fast onto the market was to build a lot of new features, kind of a startup phase, and just do it in the shortest time possible, of course, right? And as long as it was pretty good experience, which we usually validated with usability testing or some research, we just shipped it and we were like, yeah, we'll fix it later. And now comes the later, right? That's optimizing product experience. We kind of realized that we had a lot of broken features that didn't fit into one nice experience for our users. Maybe different designers designed it and they weren't really meeting each other in the seams. So switching people who were working in this mode for several years, and I'm not just talking about developers, but even designers, were very used to it, just designing something and moving on to some other shiny thing. It was hard. It's a completely different mindset, right? So the mindset switch was the hardest part, I think. Switching them to thinking about we have something here and we need to find out how it should work for our people. Or if it should even be in the product, maybe it's so bad that we just need to hide it for a little bit. That was really hard. And we basically used empathy through research to kind of build that muscle. We built a lot of prototypes. We tested with our users where developers could sit on these tests. We shared a lot of feedback from our customers and also internal teams, which in Kentico are using our product. That's very helpful. And basically we worked and worked and worked. But the positive thing about it is that one day it just sort of magically happened, right? And I guess it's kind of similar to that snowball effect I talked about earlier. With time, when you just keep on stacking on, it looks like nothing is really happening. And then after a lot of time, we are here, I'm still amazed by developers coming to designers with great design ideas, or maybe like a design wireframes for something, or roles that are not in development even, like those internal teams, giving a damn about how something works or what the good experience for our clients should be. That feels pretty amazing. I think that's a big success actually. All right. So another big part about doing this in Kentico, that was the hardest part by far for us, was measuring impact. And anyone that ever tries to measure like your user experience, if you don't have something like an e-commerce site when basically good experience equals people buying stuff or conversions. We don't really have that, right? We have a service that people pay for every month, and they just pay for it, and maybe they stop pay for it, right? But they don't tell us specifically why, they just churn. So if you ever tried that, you know that that's pretty hard. And we have a couple of successes, so maybe I can share that. That was probably the most hardcore part of building better experiences, you know, like measuring you are going in the right direction. Interviews with users are very helpful, but they will only get you so far. They are better for discovery research anyway, and you just learn the story of your users, but you can use it to compare, you know, what you did and if it's better than something else. So it's probably the one design effort in this whole project that we invested a lot or the most into. We really had to make sure that we have impact and that we have right key results and our outcome made sense. Also, because we needed to make sure that we can measure something like design impact, right, on our users. We knew that this project will probably take a while, and it's still ongoing, and it will probably be ongoing for a long time. And I wanted to be sure that our people working on it won't just run out of steam, you know, and that they have something to see how they are moving forward, basically. So there comes a time when you are working on this for a few months, when you start asking yourself, wait, what was my goal with this again? Where was I going with this? And that's really a humbling moment, right? When you kind of realize that, yeah, maybe something that I set up a few months ago or maybe a few years ago wasn't that great, and I need to come back to the beginning and think about what am I trying to really accomplish here for our company or our users. So just long story short, we had to build a whole infrastructure around measuring what users think. Like I said, interviewing users is just not good enough. And we used all of this listed here on the screen. So I'm just going to go over it individually. The first one, UMUX Light Survey. It's kind of similar to NPS, but the NPS Net Promoter Score is actually not a great way to measure user experience, because it tells you more about how are your customers satisfied with your product. But part of that can be pricing, for example, right? That has nothing to do with user experience. So what the UX Light Survey does is that it's splitting the rating of your features, you know, or what the product is doing for your users, with the ease of use rating. And this way you can have a pretty good idea where you are failing your users, you know, if they are not satisfied with your features or if they are not satisfied with the ease of use. So that's pretty good, and we have that in app. Another good one is single ease question, the second one, and it's basically a quick question that you can ask when you are doing research or you are testing something, and it will tell you how hard or how easy was something for them. Another one that was really helpful were regular usability testings, right? And it might sound weird, regular usability testing, but think about it for a second. Usually people do usability testing just for new features. And if you are building your product for a few years and you are still testing new features and new features, you never have time to stop and think about, all right, how do all of these features work together? And this is exactly what we did. We started with this initiative of doing a regular usability testing, where we just test existing product with our users, and we put together a couple of scenarios of what our product should do, and we never test anything new there. We just test existing product that they are using, hopefully every day or week. And it serves sort of like a sanity check of the whole app. It's very helpful, very eye-opening, really recommend it. So the last one is the adoption of app segments. And this is sort of a very simple hypothesis. If people are not using something, they probably won't appreciate great experience that is in that feature or segment. So if you have a major feature that exists in your product and people are not using it, right? Like 0% of your users are using it, there's something wrong. Either you build wrong feature or you build it for wrong people, or like the user experience is just really bad or it's buggy, right? And you need to start somewhere. So thinking about adoption is really good metric, because it gives you a sort of first check into how it works. If there's like a half of people using that feature, you can ask the other half, like, why are you not using it? And maybe they'll tell you, well, we'd like to use it, but the user experience is atrocious. Right, moving on. Yeah, I'd like to say in this slide that trying to measure user experience without having specific goals of what you are trying to accomplish, it's like the highest difficulty of doom. It's much worse than nightmare. Like measuring user experience scientifically is really hard. It took us way longer than it should have probably. I'm gonna go over a few details in how you can make it better if you ever need to do it. Alright, so wrapping this first section up, what actually helped us a lot was that defining that goal, right? That specific outcome, where we should have that impact, what we should change for the company or the users when we are done. Because changing user experience or having better user experience, that's a very foggy term. It might sound really good on paper, but actually what it means, right? What does it mean? Does it mean like having a better UI design that's more attractive or more cool, more animations? Or is it much better usability, like faster usability, power users, doing their thing? Or does it mean like better NPS results, like people consistently rating you as a great product? Or is it winning against competition? That's something different, right? Than like shiny UI that we started with. Or is it happy customers, the customers that retain for a really long time, give you big value, renew their subscriptions and stuff like that? Or is it fast performance, for someone that might be it? Nice UX for me is when everything is snappy and my app is really responsive. But it's really hard to change something non-specific like emotions or feelings. And it's true that you can fail your goals if you don't have any. But it's really hard to succeed at those goals as well. So I'd highly recommend to start with this and start with defining a very specific outcome of what user experience should do for you. And it will make everything else much easier. All right. Well, we are just past the 30-minute mark, so I think we're doing well. We are now moving into the second part, into my recommendations of what you should be working on or what you should be doing if you ever want to do something similar. Maybe you have a digital product, you're not too sure about how the user experience is working across the whole customer experience, and you want to improve that. So what you should be doing? Well, let's explore that a little bit, how to build good, well-architectured, wholesome experiences. Well, first of all, like I said in the end of the first segment, I would really start with the why. Why do you need excellent user experience in this first place? Maybe CEO is telling you that they need better user experience, but he actually means one of those things that I listed earlier, like really nice shiny UI or good performance, something like that. Does it really mean great product customer experience? And what does it mean for you personally or for your business? And what does it mean for your users? Because like your customers, if you are, for example, an e-commerce site, like I mentioned, that might be very different from doing something like a software as a service as we are doing in Kentico. For your product to have a good experience, you need to first define what that experience should do for users, right? Does it convert users in trial? Does it mean that you are better than your competition and you consistently win over them? Does it mean that your customers don't churn, like cancel the subscription? Or is it just because great UX feeds your growth? Make sure you know at the start, before you even start developing anything or you think about developing anything, because that's the most expensive part of doing these changes. If there's no why yet, and people who are like telling you to help with this project don't really know why, you'll have to create one. That was kind of our case a little bit. We knew a little bit what we wanted to accomplish and what we wanted to do. I mentioned it earlier, feature race and stuff like that. But still, better user experience was a very foggy term for us, and we just had to define it a little more. And after we did that, it helped immensely. So the hardest question of any design, I think, but especially designing new experience or better experience, is what you should be building. If you should do something new, some new feature that will help you maybe wrap something together, or if you should stop and fix something existing, stuff like that. That is the hardest question. So when you have that clear outcome I talked about earlier, if you define it really well and you have a specific goal and how you measure it, it will make it much easier to decide that, how you could prioritize something and what you should be working on, what you should be building with your development teams. And like I said in the start, if things don't work out for you, don't worry about it. You can always come back to your goals and change it, or maybe swap them a little bit or tweak them. That's completely fine. Just start with something. Start with maybe a single metric that you will feel comfortable about using. Don't build something great or big like we did with our infrastructure. Build something manageable that you can comfortably manage and just go from there, and you'll see how it goes, So the second advice that I would give to you is keep your users close. I already talked about how really important the great access to users is, and really let's just stop with the UX theater, let's not do any research or design sprints or anything like that that's popular right now. Just because someone else is telling you that you should be doing it. Keep what's useful in your existing process and just throw away the rest. Get close to your users. It will really help you. If you can, for example, usability testing is useful to decrease risks from releasing something new that's bad. But maybe you can release that really fast and then you can go with that risk, right? Because it's maybe a new thing that no one or not everyone will use at the start. So if you can go with that risk, feel free to do that. Feel free not to test. It depends on you and what the outcome will be. It's not set in stone anywhere. Or maybe do a closed beta. We do that all the time. It doesn't matter that much. It doesn't matter if you ship something that's broken for a while. If you really stay with it and you are fixing it, as you go. It's more about that goal you are trying to achieve. You don't need to do any UX theater for anyone. User is the real client. And if you really know that you already know your users, get much closer. Get much closer. Every year I've worked in Kentico, I already thought I know my users pretty well. And after another year, I had to admit, that I didn't really know anything about what real challenges they are trying to solve. It's pretty humbling. But I think it's where the real growth for the designer comes from, And there are so many good sources for user connection or user feedback. You just have to dedicate time specifically to this activity. Like maybe do field studies, with your users. We did that and it helped us a lot. Or do journals, like journaling, people keeping the journals of how they use an app and pay them for that. Do regular calls with your clients. For example, we have a customer success department that is trying to help our clients build better projects, but user experience don't normally attend that, but it's a very good source of feedback, right? Maybe it's not 100% relevant, but it helps you build a lot of empathy, you know, seeing what the users are really trying to achieve with your product. Or you can talk to internal departments like sales, support, even marketing. Marketing has very good insights usually into what people are trying to do with your product, you know? Like talk to everyone inside your company and outside. Ideally, you want to spend some time with your real users. For example, we have a business-to-business software, right? So normally people just say, yeah, it's B2B, it's very hard to get access. Well, no worries. We don't really need to know who's our user. We just need to sell them. Wrong. You will never build great experiences this way. So, for example, with field studies, we already had some success last year. And the year before that, we just spent a day or a few days with some of our customers, just observing what they do, you know, how very junior people use our tool, how very senior people use our tool, you know, what's the experiences for the like, what sort of hardware do they use, and it was really eye-opening, I think. Well, you might get idea from this that it can be very time-intensive, right? Like field studies, journaling, regular calls, that sort of thing. And to be successful in this, I think you really need some specialists who just talk to users or schedule time for that. We are very lucky in Kentico that we have multiple of these departments. For example, we have, like I mentioned, customer success, we have a support team, we have a very good sales team who are very customer centric and very UX oriented. But we also have a great research department that just talks to users and they do research and they help us as a designers basically build empathy, and that's great. And also, for example, when I started with this project, I spent a couple of first weeks and months just gathering more insights, you know, and data. I wasn't sure what we should be working on or how we should even approach optimizing UX. Because I wasn't that sure that I know what are the real challenges of our users, you know. So just spend some time doing that. And the most important part from this advice is you need to streamline information flow. There's this great diagram from the intercom service back when they used to have that animal branding. I don't know if you guys remember that. And I still remember this from their landing page, so obviously it was built really well. In the normal company, right, the information flow from your customers to people who are actually making decisions is very, very clumsy. Maybe your customers talk to your sales department or they talk to support, and after something is critical, those support guys talk to like product people or maybe CEO or COO, people like that. And then after a couple of then other like meetings, stuff like that, the information gets very diluted. No one writes anything down, right? You don't have the contact for the client to ask the people how it meant. And usually after that, designer starts to work on a design, right? It can be months after someone had an initial complaint. And it's very slow and it's very diluted. And what you need to do is get straight to the users. Don't be afraid to just talk to the users. You don't need a product manager. You don't need a sales operative to set up a meeting for you. Open an email and email your users or your business partners and start talking with them. Ideally, your information flow should be straightforward. So there's a user and there's a designer and they are talking to each other. There's no one in between, you know, and every time the designer needs to know something, he can just talk straight to the users. And we are very lucky. We are using intercom with product board. It's a great combo. And anytime anyone has a user experience complaint, I can just open intercom and start talking to the user and ask them what they meant, you know, and follow up on that. And we are using a lot of automated tagging. For example, like those surveys that I mentioned earlier are all plugged into intercom. So when someone rates us as having a low experience, it's automatically tagged as someone rated us low, and it gets assigned to me or our research department. and I can just jump into Intercom, I get an email, and I can just follow up, hey, thank you for your feedback, why are you rating us this way, if they didn't specify that. And everything is all cataloged in product board, which is a sort of feedback categorizing tool. If you don't know that, highly recommend. And we have very simple reports, basically just a table that tells us how we are doing, what sort of data we are gathering. And all of our user feedback is in one place. It's very searchable and it's very usable. And almost everyone in the company has access to that. So if you are a junior developer who are working on a new feature that is optimizing user experience, and you are absolutely out of context, you don't know what is like going on, you can just start product board and search for this feature, or maybe you ask someone to like hold your hand and link it for you, and then you can just read all the feedback from all our sources, customers, internal customers, beta users, sales partners, and it's all in one place. And that's extremely valuable. It's really in top shape this way, and I can't even imagine doing this without having this sort of infrastructure. So just to kind of summarize this screen, it was really a little information heavy, sorry about it. Your goal should be to have one source of user feedback. For us, it's product board, and it needs to be actionable. So someone writes that something is shit, next day designer can follow up with them before it's too late, before the person, forgets or he gets fired or something like that. All right. Next advice. So to do all of this pretty complex stuff that we are talking about, you need great tools that people in teams can actually use. And mostly you can use common design thinking tools, like workshop for idea generation, all like regular user experience designers. If you already have those in your company, or maybe you are user experience designer, you probably know what I'm talking about, right? That's pretty straightforward. But also you'll be doing a lot of discovery, like actually thinking about what you should be prioritizing, what you should be working on, and getting to know your users. And that's pretty interesting. You need to be prioritizing opportunities, not solutions, right? And to do that, you need to talk about what to build and what not to build. That's equally important. And the way that most people prioritize stuff is like this, right? They have a desired outcome. For example, they want to increase their engagement, and usually a couple of like either PMs or user experience designer sit around the room and they're like, all right, well, we could add a dislike button, someone asked for that. And they're like, yeah, it might work. So they build it and they ship it. And then they wait, like what will happen? And maybe nothing will happen. It won't drive engagement. And then they are like, well, that didn't work. We lost a couple of months. So what now? Well, let's try building something else. And they never will revisit this feature, So don't do that. Don't just talk about one solution. Prioritize more opportunities at once. Don't talk about whether you should build this one thing or whether you shouldn't build this one thing. Maybe it's expensive. No, compare multiple solutions and compare multiple opportunities or problems. This is a opportunity solution tree, which is a really great tool that we are using. It looks a little bit like this. It's just an example. If you want to know more about this, just Google Product Talk. It's a blog by Teresa Torres, which is kind of my personal guru in how to prioritize right stuff and how to do right discovery teams. I won't go into any more details, but like I said, basically here you can see that you have multiple opportunities or linked to this one outcome. Ideally, all of these green should be based on user research. So you are talking to your customers and they are generating these opportunities, right? And after a while of breaking these down, you'll probably have one that's like most asked for, or you think it's most viable to fill that desired outcome. And then you can start thinking about solutions, and you don't just split this into one. You split this into multiple solutions, right, to this opportunity, because it's a problem. It shouldn't be a feature. Like the feature is here, the yellow fields, right? And after you're done prioritizing and you pick this opportunity, then you might make a couple of experiments, right, that are very quick features that might prove this hypothesis, that this will work or not. Anyway, it's too much information to go over here. Just Google product talk, Teresa Torres. She's great. All right, so my last advice on how to succeed in this is having team with one focus. Never split team focus on other stuff. It's really hard to keep at this as it is, and it's really complicated, like mentally. Customer experience will absolutely overwhelm you. It's very holistic. You'll need to go over like different disciplines. For example, usually a developer, user experience designer, and a data analyst will need to talk to each other a lot, including a product or project manager, something like that. And it's really hard to do as a side project. I think it's absolutely impossible. If you are thinking about this, like optimizing your user experience, and you want to do it in maybe like 10% of your time on Fridays, you rather shouldn't even think about it. You need designers, developers, researchers, maybe data analysts who have singular focus. The car is Ford Focus, by the way. And it really doesn't work as a side project. All right, so let's sort of summarize like this whole segment, what we kind of went through in more details. What you should do if you want to build good, well-architectured experiences, you need to decide what to do, and for that you need to know what you are trying to achieve. And strong outcome will help you. It's good to define that with your stakeholders, like a CEO or client if you are a freelancer. Maybe even time box it to avoid like endless projects, like we are going to do this for the next 6 months, for example. And next, like I said, keep your users as close to you as possible. Get to know them, spend time with them, not just your users, but your potential business cases as well. Why is your business case working like this? Why it doesn't work in some other way? Who are the people picking the product? Are those people the same people that are going to use that product? Find out what they are paying you for, basically. Why don't they just use competition or something easier, Well, what's your value proposition anyway? If you want to do this, you should know that, definitely. And next one is build or use good tools for your teams. Great data analysis, single source of truth, prioritization, all that stuff. It's very useful. People will naturally pick it up. If you have a good foundation, you don't need to persuade anyone, or do any office politics. People will just see that it's useful for them and they will pick it up. And yeah, the last one is have teams with one focus. Keep people focused on this. Just do it or not do it. Like there's no other options really. All right. Well, little plug here. That was my talk, about 50 minutes. I hope you enjoyed that. There's going to be a Q&A. Just a quick plug, like I said. If you're interested in this, just follow us on Kentico Design on Twitter. I think Peter and Veronica, our designers who are taking care of Kentico Design, are doing really good job. There's a lot of articles that we share there. We're very active on Medium, for example. If you want to read some of my posts on Medium, you can just Google Medium at Petr Augustin, and yeah, I have some articles there. And if you want to continue this conversation, you can join me on LinkedIn. That's all right. And just if you want to ask there, I'm okay with it. All right. So thank you for your attention. Let's wrap this up and let's read your questions. From the sli.do. Design hour. sorry. I'm showing there. Right, so looks like there's only one question. That's right. Sometimes there's not too many. So Peter is actually asking, how did you manage to get data previously thought to be impossible to obtain? Can you give us some examples and tips? Let me just think about it for a second. What's a good example of that? Right, so for example, one of the things that we did with Amplitude, like I mentioned, which is a software that we use for data analysis, is that we didn't really differentiate data by customers. We basically used data analysis based on users, right? Like user flows and stuff like that, which is very useful for things like websites, if you have an e-commerce site, but it's not that useful if you have a software as a service, because like if you're B2B, you have large customers, you need to see what's the adoption for those customers. To give you a quick example, imagine you have one big customer and 10 small customers, and maybe you have 1,000 users altogether. So like 900 of those users are just split into one company. If you maybe in each company there's just one project manager, right? So you probably have like 10 project managers. And if you just look at adoption of some project manager feature, you just see 10 people using it out of 1,000. And that seems like a really small adoption, right? It looks like the feature is not performing, it's not doing what it should. But if you use this different kind of view and you are able to see through the companies, you can see that actually 100% of your companies are adopting this feature. It's just very specific and maybe not all of your users will be utilizing, but that can be okay, you know. Maybe, for example, you have an admin interface that not every user needs. So this is something that we didn't do previously, and it required some work, and our internal team, who are like our data analysts, helped us a lot with that. And yeah, we managed to build like a second layer of the data in Amplitude, and now we are able to split by the different companies. So I think that's pretty useful. Hopefully you can do something like that. All right. Well, looks like there's no other questions. So I guess that's a good idea to wrap things up. Thank you very much for giving me the attention this evening and letting me speak here. I hope you enjoyed it and hopefully it helped you a little bit. Like I said, feel free to reach out to us or me personally on LinkedIn, that's right. And have a great evening. And that's it from me. Ciao.